Well, hello and welcome. I'm Misheard with Misheard Song Lyrics podcast. We're in season 7, episode 358. The misheard lyric is, got a beer tent to show you, so tell the boys and girls. And then the correct lyrics is, got a weird thing to show you, so tell the boys and girls. So beer tent and weird thing sounds pretty close, which I cannot hear now. Well, if you haven't guessed it, this is our first ever Cameo misheard song lyric, and I'm very excited. And this was a band that just didn't play funk, it weaponized it. So if I say the words word up, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For some of you, it's that unmistakable nasal voice, like that, what up, right? That's the first thing I think of. For others, it's that bright red, unapologetic, athletic codpiece, worn by frontmen with a flawless high top fade, right? According to songfacts.com, what is word up? Well, it says word up is a saying that was popular in New York and other urban areas in the U.S. that acted as an affirmation of what was said, kind of a hippier you bet. Cameo developed the character around the saying and wrote the lyrics about what he would say. They called the character Vicious. I didn't even know there was a character, and had him take out his frustrations on rappers who delved into psychodrama when they should be creating music you can just dance to. Quote unquote, give us music, we can that. We can, it says, give us music, we can that. We need to dance. We don't need that type of psychological romance. That makes sense. That's the lyric in the song. Yes, today we're charting the meteoric rise, the massive chart battles, and the enduring legacy of Cameo. Word up. Here we go. But before we lean into this mean stadium packing funk trio in the mid 80s, they were literally a small army of musicians trying to find their name in the gritty streets of the mid 70s New York. Let's wind the clock back to 1974. What is that? 52 years ago. Wow. So Word Up, exclamation mark, is a song by American funk band Cameo and was released by Atlanta artists and Mercury Records as the first single from their 13th studio album called Word Up from 1986. Yours truly was 14. The song was written by band members Larry Blackman, Codpiece and all, Tommy Jenkins, and produced by Blackman. It frequently aired on American dance, R&B, and contemporary hit radio, as well as its MTV music video, which that's how I learned about it. And there's a cameo there, so let's put a pin on that when we talk about the music video, because I totally forgot who the police detective in the video was to arrest the man, and it comes back to me after seeing it how many years later. It helped the single become a hit because of this crazy music video, allowing it to reach number 6 in the US, number 3 in the UK, and number 1 in New Zealand. And several, not one, not two, but several music artists have covered the song since its release in different genres. So who's Cameo? Well, it's an American funk band that was formed in 1974, and it was initially a 14 member group known as the New York City Players. And then it was changed later to Cameo, and the group is best known for the title track and Candy from its 1986 album Word Up. In 1974, a visionary mastermind by the name of Larry Blackman brought together a massive 14-member group known initially, as I said, the New York City Players. Now imagine trying to split a paycheck 14 ways in 1970s New York. You've got to be dedicated to do this. And by 1975, they caught the attention of a Casablancas Records, who signed them for their Chocolate City imprint. I love this. They were just one tiny problem, their name. Mercury Records gave them a polite legal tap on the shoulder and said, hey, we already have the Ohio Players and your name is way too similar. So how did they get the name Cameo? It wasn't deep, psychological, artistic epiphany. Here's the origin story. Well, on a gig up north, the man noticed a popular brand of Canadian cigarettes called Cameo. They liked the look of it, liked the sound of it, and just like that, music history was made. Out went the New York City Players, and came Cameo. So that's how they got their name. And before they locked that official, well-known name, Blackman and key players like keyboardist Gregory Johnson were grinding a different collective called East Coast alongside the legendary Gwen Guthrie. But by 1977, Cameo was ready to strike it out on its own. They dropped their debut album, Cardiac Arrest, and honestly, the title was accurate, right? Because the lead single, Rigor Mortis, was an absolute heart stopper on the dance charts. They followed up fast with albums like We All Know Who We Are and Ugly Ego. They even landed their debut single, Find My Way, a stellar disco cover of a Times tune, onto the iconic soundtrack for the 1978 movie, Thank God It's Friday. Another track, It's Serious, soundtracked a massive dance contest scene in the film. So movies definitely helped and got them, heard and seen. By 1978, they made a crucial addition to the family. They hired a powerhouse bassist by the name of Aaron Mills, who joined the crew after a stint with Donald Byrd's jazz funk collective NCCU. Mills brought a slap bass pocket that would eventually define the Cameo sound for the next decade. So here we go. We're going to start to strike gold. As the 70s bled into the 80s, the music landscape was shifting. Disco was cooling off, as we were seeing, and synthesizer-driven funk was moving in, and Larry Blackman knew exactly how to pivot. In 1979, Cameo dropped the single, I Just Wanna Be. It exploded, hitting number 3 on the Billboard R&B chart. Paired with a gorgeous top R&B ballad called Sparkle, it pushed their album Secret Omen to gold status, their very first record to sell over 500,000 copies. And again, this is back when people had to actually go to the record store and buy the record. And folks, they were just getting warmed up. Look at this run of success that put them together right at the turn of the decade. 1980, they released Cameosis, which shoots straight to number 1 on the R&B chart and number 25 on the Billboard 200, driven by the timeless funk anthem Shake Your Pants. Late 1980, they dropped Feel Me, keeping the momentum rolling. And in 81 and 82, they delivered Knights of the Sound Table and Alligator Woman. Both records went gold. By this point, Cameo was famous for their eclectic theatrical style, but behind the scenes, keeping a massive band together, remember, that's a lot of them, was exhausting. In 1983, key members Aaron Mills, Thomas T.C. Campbell, and Darrell Bright briefly split to form a spin-off called MCB, so they did their own group. Instead of panicking, Blackman used this as an opportunity to streamline. The 14-member army was shrinking into a tighter, punchier, and more aggressive funk unit. In 1984, they dropped She's Strange. The title track became their first official number 1 R&B hit and cracked the mainstream pop charts at number 47. The world was finally waking up to the fact that Cameo wasn't just an R&B phenomenon, they were a global force. Enter Word Up. This brings us to 1985 and 86. Again, yours truly was 14 at this time, and I started to see him on MTV. If you were alive during this era, Lily could not escape Cameo, and I was definitely alive. First came the album Single Life in 85, featuring the massive title track Attack Me With Your Love, which climbed all the way up to number 2 on the top R&B chart. But then came 1986, the magnum opus, Word Up. The single Word Up didn't just chart, it dominated. It locked down the number 1 spot on the R&B charts and stormed the Billboard Hot 100 at number 6, cementing it as their biggest pop crossover hit ever. The Word Up album peaked at number 8 on the Billboard 200 and number 1 on the top R&B charts, making it the commercial high water mark of their career. 2 years later, in 1988, they tried to capture lightning the ball again with Machismo, but music tastes were starting to shift toward New Jack Swing, and the album received some mixed reviews, slipping down the charts. I mean, it's so fickle out there, right? They closed out the classic era with 1990's Real Men Wear Black and 1992's Emotional Violence before transitioning into the legacy act status that they so richly deserve. Let's talk about the music video. Let's unpin that. Remember I told you to pin it earlier? When you look at YouTube, it was uploaded back on June 16, 2009, so it's hit 17 years. It's at a whopping 57.8 million views and counting. And legendary. You had Larry Blackman strutting around in a police precinct wearing that famous red codpiece, defying all laws of standard fashion and physics, while who walks in? LeVar Burton. Yes, Kunta Kinte, Geordie LaForge, reading Rainbow LeVar Burton, playing a detective trying to track them down. The album Word Up went multi-platinum, but they weren't done. The follow-up singles kept the heat blazing. Candy, a masterclass in synth pop and horn lines that hit number 1 on the R&B chart and number 21 on the pop chart. A track so good that artists were still sampling it decades later. Shout out to Mariah Carey's Loverboy and Will Smith's Candy. So it came from that song. Back and Forth, another groove heavy hitter that reached number 3 in R&B and number 50 in the pop charts. All right, so back to Cameo. Even as the 90s and 2000 rolled on, Cameo's DNA never left the airwaves. The influence on hip-hop is immeasurable. In fact, original bassist Aaron Mills and guitarist Charlie Singleton were so revered that the legendary hip-hop Outcasts, which I did a misheard song lyric many episodes ago, many seasons ago, actually hired them to bring that authentic, stinky Southern funk to records like Stankonia and Speakerboxx, The Love Below. If you love the bass line on Miss Jackson or The Whole World, you're listening to the DNA of Cameo. I did not know that. And then through the 2000s, core members continued to tour, proving that real funk doesn't age out. In 2015, they announced a massive residency show at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, which opened in March of 2016 to packed houses. That was 10 years ago already. Just when you thought Larry Blackmon had hung up his boots or codpiece, he surprised the world back on February 20th, 2019 by releasing El Paso, Cameo's first brand new single in the studio, about 19 long years. So that's what happened. But I want to get right to the covers, because this is what I had no idea about. So we talked about how Larry Blackmon and Cameo created an immortal funk masterpiece with their 1986 mega hit, Word Up. But a truly great song, okay, is a chameleon. It doesn't just stay in its own era or its own genre. In the 1990, Word Up did something incredibly rare. It didn't just get sampled by hip-hop artists. It crossed enemy lines, as they said. It went from the dance floor of the 80s straight into the gritty, distorted world of the 90s, hard rock, and then right back into the peak of millennial British pop culture. Today, we're looking at the two wildest lives of Word Up after Cameo left the studio, a Scottish rock reinvention that got granddads complaining about the noise, and a solo Spice Girl cover produced by a hip-hop mastermind that was deemed too hot for MTV daytime. So grab your headphones, because they're about to get loud. So let's set up the scene. In July 1st of 1994, the music world is drowning in flannel, grunge, and alternative rock. And I knew it because I lived in the heart of it. I was growing up in Oregon, which is the state underneath Seattle, and that's where grunge was born, essentially. Now enter Gun, a hard rock band hauling straight out of Glasgow, Scotland. They were preparing to release their third studio album called Swagger under A&M Records, and they needed a lead single that absolutely grabbed people by the throat. They decided to take a massive gamble. Most rock songs back then were being remixed into dance tracks, but Gun decided to do the exact reverse journey. They took Cameo's flawless electro-funk groove and weaponized it with heavy distortion, a thumping rock backbeat, and a blistering guitar studio. And you know what? The critics actually absolutely went wild for it. Music Week magazine named it their pick of the week, giving it a 4 out of 5 stars, I guess marveling at how perfect the funk track worked in its new heavy setting. And over at Music and Media, they wrote, quote unquote, a good song is half the work. Admit it, with the Cameo olding, nobody could go wrong. But the Scottish artillery deserves due credit for the guts to cover the funker in the hard rock way. My favorite review came from a Pete Stanton at Smash Hits, who gave it a flawless 5 out of 5, crowning it the best new single and joking, quote unquote, it's also one of those songs that should get the granddads moaning about the noise. Why? The gamble paid off. The track was so instantly catchy that television networks immediately snatched it up as the play-out music for Top of the Pops. Wow. It became a massive European hit, screaming up to number 4 in Scotland and hitting number 8 on the UK singles chart. It even charted in Germany, France, Ireland, and the Netherlands. It also brought the physical CD single in the UK. It was such a big deal that A&M Records actually released 2 different versions of the CD, each with totally different track lists and unique cover art just to satisfy the fans. Gun proved that a great groove transcends genre. If it's funky in 86, it can rock in 1994. But it doesn't stop there. It goes to from the rock clubs of Glasgow, fast forward 5 years to June 28th, 1999. The world is gripped by Austin Power Mania. Austin Power, The Spy Who Shagged Me, is hitting theaters, and the soundtrack needs to have an absolute blockbuster. Enter British pop royalty Melanie Brown, better known to the world as Scary Spice, or Mel B from the Spice Girls. At this specific moment in time, she was credited as Melanie G, having just married one of the Spice Girls' backup dancer, Jimmy Gulzar. Mel G wanted to put her own stamp on Word Up, so it was used for the music soundtrack. But she didn't sing over a basic backing track. She went out and got the hottest hip-hop producer on the planet to man the boards. And who was that? Timbaland. Timbaland stripped away the rock guitars of the 80s and the 80s horn, replacing them with signature futuristic stuttering digital beats, okay? And the track even featured uncredited background vocals from the late R&B legend Static Major. I did not know that, okay? And as a fun Easter egg for Spice Girl fans, Melanie's bandmate Baby Spice herself, Emma Bunton, lent her vocals to the B-side track, a cover of Sophisticated Lady. The single was a commercial success, smashing into the UK singles chart at number 13 and finding home on the Japanese edition of Melanie's solo album called Hot. But because of this, there was another music video, not the one we know of originally from 1986 with the codpiece and Cameo. There were two actually music videos for this song. The original live action video was a part dark fantasy and high fashion dominatrix fever dream, heavily inspired by the legendary Grace Jones. I actually found it on YouTube, and it's a doozy. Featured none other than Vern Troy. He was the actor that played Mini-Me in the Austin Powers film. And let's just say the imagery left standard television censors sweating through their suits. The censored scenes that caused the sweating, in one highly controversial scene, Melanie G was portrayed lying down entirely nude with only a digital heart covering her private area. In another even stranger scene, Vern Troy Mini-Me is literally polishing her buttocks like he's cleaning a window. To top it all off, near the end of the video, a random child appears wearing a dress. And this is all like computer generated. It's not like real people, just to let you know. With the word, I think it's pronounced phagocyte? Phagocyte, a biological term for a cell that engulfs bacteria printed across it. Well, TV executives looked at this sci-fi, sexually suggestive, and borderline terrifying imagery and said, quote unquote, absolutely not for daytime television. So the original video was instantly banned from normal rotation and restricted to being played only after midnight on MTV Europe and MTV UK. To save the single's promotional run, the directors had to scramble to create a completely sanitized second version. That's why there's two videos for the Mel B, now Mel G because she got married, version. One version was highly digitally animated in black and white, comic book world, and another put Melanie in a gleaming, harmless blue metallic setting wearing shiny gem-like outfits, a lot of blue. It was a wild, chaotic moment, late 1990s pop culture, all powered by a song Larry Blackmon wrote on a whim decade earlier. So think about the journey this one song took. It started in 1986 as an R&B and pop crossover giant with an iconic red codpiece. It transformed into a distorted headbanging Scottish rock anthem in 1994 and then pivoted into a futuristic Timbaland-produced late 90s pop spectacle that shocked MTV. It proves that some songs just aren't tracks on an album, they're living cultural artifacts. No matter if you like the slap bass of the 80s, the screaming guitars of the 90s, or the experimental beats of the 2000s, Word Up has a version just for you. That wraps up with our deep dive into the extended universe of Cameo. Which version is your favorite? The original? Funk? The hard rock swagger from Gun? Or the Timbaland pop remix? Let us know in our comments. And if you have any great music misheard songs like this, always send it to our Instagram, Facebook, or old-fashioned email at misheard, MISSHEARD songs@gmail.com. Till then, word up and keep singing those songs wrong. Bye!